If a prince wants to conquer a city and the city does not want to be conquered, they would hate him. But if the prince pays criminals to kill cows, burn barns, smash windows, set things on fire, the people will panic in fear and cry out for help. And the prince will come in, get rid of the very criminals he bribed to create the problem. Nobody will know the better for it, and everyone will praise the prince as a hero. So it's called Machiavellianism, where you create or capitalize on a crisis to consolidate control.
Tear gas being deployed as protesters clash with police. And News Nation is tracking the unrest in LA County tonight after sweeping raids from immigration and customs enforcement officers today. Protests also erupting across.
Hey, Inspire Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers. John Nolan here. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is Wednesday, June 11th, 2025. Out of the Matrix into Prime Reality. Thank you so much for joining us on X, Rumble, and YouTube in the live chat. It's good to see you all for a Buckle Up episode. There's no better way to put it, but I think we might be in for another summer of love. Remember 2020, the summer of love. And, you know, it's shaping up to be this way. I can't say it for certain, but the ingredients are all there. And that's what we're going to talk about today. You know, when you tune into various places in the world, of course, right now, the United States, that's a hot button issue. But then you go into Ireland, the rest of the UK, you go into Austria and Germany and France, other Central European countries. And you realize that in the Northern Hemisphere, you know, in the Western world, in the Northern Hemisphere, we might have just reached that threshold, which was clear that it was going to happen, but people didn't want to acknowledge it. They didn't want to see it that way. Everything that has happened in the past 15, 20 years with regard to immigration, and before that, right? It was since World War II, this has been going on, specifically in Europe, where you had, and at that time, it was more sophisticated. It was under the banner of, we need labor, we need expertise, we need this, we need that. But then after the turn of the millennium, you had basically open floodgates with completely unhinged immigration. And the problematic part is always when that immigration comes from parts of the world that are culturally, religiously, completely different. And that's exactly what's been going on. And this is no accident. And for those who have been paying attention and studying, this is clear. But for many people, this still isn't clear at all. The last 4 years in the United States with unhinged open border immigration, and that's not even called immigration, that is called invasion, when 10, 15 million people and more perhaps flood into the nation without any due process. In Europe, and I want to specifically also talk about Europe because it's really on the edge there too. You have violent crimes all the time, stabbings and whatnot. And we have to understand that this is all a steered psychological and sociological operation. This is social engineering and re-engineering. It is the restructuring of societies. It's the restructuring of nations. It's the killing off of native populations. And it's the restructuring of the world, of this technocratic world that we talk about so often. But with this immigration issue, you have, for example, and I go beyond the headlines, you know, and I've studied what has happened in Germany and Austria and other European countries where immigrants would come in and bring their families, lots of children and whatnot, and get a kind of government monthly support that is insane. You know, they often, most of the time, don't work because they're not even allowed to work. They get all these benefits from the government and free housing and free phones and free clothes and money and whatnot. And meanwhile, the situation for the working population, for business owners, the tax situation worsens for the native population, and it creates a social unrest and a social tension. And that's what's been going on for a couple decades now. And so it was clear for anybody who paid attention, it was clear that this unrest at some point has to happen, but it is engineered. And it is absolutely engineered to stir up and to create violence, to create more division, more hatred. And I'll say this over and over again. The agenda at work that's going to be discussed, by the way, this week at the Bilderberg meeting in Stockholm in Sweden, that is discussed at the WEF meetings, at the Trilateral Commission, the Council of Foreign Relations, and the lesser known organizations. That's being discussed every single day. How to push this through. What do we need? Where do we need unrest? Where do we need violence? Where do we need distraction? Where do we need this? And they're still pushing. And what is my most important point, if you stop watching after this, is nothing has fundamentally changed. In world affairs, nothing has fundamentally changed. And anybody who tries to tell you otherwise is a grifter, a liar, or just clueless. It's nothing has changed with the course of the world. It's still racing in the same direction. What has changed is awareness in common people and consciousness. But what we can prepare for, Saturday, June 14th, there is a massive wave of protests going through the entire nation. You know, put on by a organization called No Kings, website nokings.org. It's a protest supposedly against, you know, this immigration, this deportation wave, Trump's use of ICE, and all that has happened. Just so you know, nokings.org, the domain, was registered in 2018, so 7 years ago. It's not that spontaneous, and it's very well organized. All the typical organizations are attached to it. What you're going to see is some peaceful, normal protesting, and what you're going to see, I presume, are riots. Nobody is currently in the public arena doing anything to calm this situation down. Nobody's trying to, because that's the whole point. The whole point is to not calm it down. And it is interesting how the last 4 years make it so easy for this to unfold now. Without those 4 years, that would have been much harder. But with those 4 years and what has happened, all of this seems to be much easier to implement. Like I said, Ireland has had, and all of the UK has had ups and downs in public unrest over the last years. The laws at hand, the clear discrimination when it comes to the justice system against the native population, for example, in the UK, has been so obvious, where violent crimes, sexual crimes committed by immigrants, specifically immigrant groups from certain places, were not investigated, and victims' families were told straight to their face, this would cause too much unrest in the community. We can't go after these folks. Yes, they did violate that 10-year-old girl. Yes, they did gang, you know what, her, but, you know, we can't do anything about it. And if you think this is an isolated thing, when you add all these things up, and when you add them up over years, injustice over injustice over injustice over injustice, you create an atmosphere of hatred. You create an atmosphere of division. You create an atmosphere that leads to then lynch justice, lynch mobs, riots, protests, and then you fuel the fire by sending in the agent provocateurs, the professional organizations. And you see the hallmarks of these professional organizations first. The organization, you know, how these riots are organized is usually pretty coherent. Then you see that, like we've seen in 2020, all of a sudden, all across the big cities, piles of bricks show up and rocks show up and all kinds of other tools that rioters might need. You see police stand down. You see a certain section of the intellectual elites, self-proclaimed, I shall say, that come out on camera, stand in front of a building that's on fire, a police building that's on fire. I remember Michael Moore, I believe it was in Minneapolis in 2020, who stood there and said, you know, that's perfectly fine. That's a legitimate tool of protest. And this is, you know, when they want, by the way, when they want it to be more calm and peaceful, they just put a little more of the calm chemicals into the water in the air. And when they want to heat things up, they turn up the towers, they turn up the frequencies, and they literally stir up people's biochemistry and their thoughts so that this can happen. The reason why this information is so important is everybody has issues and subjects in their lives that will trigger them emotionally. Everybody has that. And immigration might not be that thing for you, but 2020, the whole medical bullshit might have been that for you, or children are that thing for you, or the wokeism is that thing for you. As you can see, they'll throw out every program and they'll throw it at us until something triggers us, where we don't realize that we react subconsciously and emotionally. We do not rationalize what is happening any longer. We don't use our creativity to observe the situation. We just react. That's what they want. They want to get the entire world, and we had a cascade of conflicts now over the last years. It is a tiresome chain of events, from wars to bombings to fake natural disasters, fires, earthquakes, hurricanes, volcanoes, you name it, mass shootings, stabbings. I mean, this is a desired effect. When we look at this line in the sand that these folks have put for themselves, the year 2030, we're 4.5 years away. And for some reason, and we could talk about that at another day, they are so hell-bent on having most of their systems in place and operational by 2030. And that's 4.5 years to shift societies completely. The idea, long-term, mid and long-term, is to erase what is left of national identities, to erase what is left of cultural identities, what is left of religious and or spiritual identities, and to basically homogenize societies all over the world in an artificial way, make them equal in an artificial way, by also eventually outlaw natural procreation, eventually put limitations on movement and all these things. And how does that relate to the immigration riots and protests and everything that's happening? You need enough unrest and enough chaos to come with new systems and answers. When there is not a big enough crisis, people have no interest in big changes. And if you haven't seen the guy in the beginning, he explained in the beginning of the show, in the intro, he explained Machiavelism, which is Machiavelli. And there's this famous book, The Prince, which I encourage everyone to read, because it's basically the playbook for kings, rulers, and even presidents. Everybody reads it. Everybody understands how to do it. And what the basic premise is, people are not interested in strong leaders or rulers, authoritarian figures, when everything's peaceful and working well. But when there is unrest, when they feel like they're being threatened by foreigners or immigrants or something else, and they feel like that threat is bigger than themselves, then they always call for strong leaders. Then when a strong leader appears, in whichever form, that leader is accepted and called for and wanted and cherished, right? And so throughout history, this has been repeated over and over and over and over and over again, the same playbook. And people are simply too naive, too blind to see it. And we've set this, for example, we've set this 20 years ago in Europe. Open your eyes. And you know, the do-gooders that simply buy every single media story of, oh my God, these people are so poor, and these poor people have been displaced in their countries, or their economies are so bad, and we need to let them all into our nations, and we need to let them all in at the same time, and we need to give them everything. And then you go and you just apply some logic and you go, hold on. So you're telling me that hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people are fleeing their country, and let's just take an example that's very common, their country, which is predominantly Muslim, but they're not seeking to go into a nation that is similar to their culture. And nations that are similar to their culture don't allow them in. You've never seen Saudi Arabia open its borders and say, come on in, from Syria, from Libya, from Afghanistan, from Iraq. They didn't do that. Supposedly, they share the same religion. I know there's differences and nuances, but you have to see that there's a much bigger tactic behind this. And the tearjerker stories are simply to pull people into a point of no return. And I'm the guy who will tell you, I would love a situation where we don't even think about borders, these artificial lines that were put up. I would love a situation where people respect each other and each other's space, and where people are peaceful with each other. That is actually a space that we envision, but we're nowhere near that. And to pretend it's that way, you know, like people say all the time, you know, just let everybody in, let them come in, you know, give them a place. And I go, okay, where do you live? I'll send them to your address. You take a few, right? You leave your door open. Don't lock it. Just take people in. You don't know them? Well, shouldn't matter. You don't know who they are, where they come from, what they've done. It shouldn't matter to you. You want everybody, so just take them. And it has gotten so insane that we're now facing these situations all over the world that were artificially created. And the thing is, if you put enough fuel in the fire, eventually that fire is going to take on a life on its own. That's exactly what's supposed to happen. So they've been just fueling and fueling and fueling. Specifically with these situations, I can't speak for what's happening in the Asian countries. I don't know, but specifically for Europe and the United States and Canada, by the way, also mass immigration over the last decades, and you know, which causes problems. It's too fast, too much. People don't have a chance to get to know each other. And when you specifically, and this is the other side of this, when you specifically push in opinion leaders and people who do not wish to assimilate or live in a country with the culture that's present, but who wish to subdue it, which is a certain stream that has come into Europe and America, where that is the goal. The goal is to annihilate the nations and the cultures as they exist and subdue them. And that is a very, very dangerous situation. Look at France. I mean, France has become, you know, sort of people from the rest of Europe. They used to love going to France and love going to Paris and the bigger cities. Nobody wants to go there anymore. Nobody wants to go to the bigger German cities any longer. You know, when half of the town isn't a really safe place to go, why would you want to visit a city? So what we see as a big potential is that this wave that's starting here will have a contagion effect on Europe, because it's already the situation is already so pent up. And I would recommend that people be mindful of that when they do summer city travel, when they plan on visiting certain cities and nations, and just keep an eye on the situation. Um, you don't want to get caught up in those kinds of situations, and cities are always going to be the battlefield for that. You know, most of these things never happen somewhere in rural places. They happen in big centers. So this wave, and we see Atlanta has already jumped on board, New York has already jumped on board, LA. So we have the big centers, the big center of the South, Atlanta. You have the big center of the West, LA. You have the big center of the East, New York. So this is already strategic placement. This is going to play out now. I'm not saying it has to happen. I'm saying there's a huge potential for it. And there we go into how the more aware and conscious people can positively contribute. And it is simply to take a certain portion of your day to consciously go into a beautiful space of peace and include anyone and everyone in that peace in this nation or even in this world. And it has an effect. We've talked about this. It has a positive effect because the truth of the matter is, even though these problems, the underlying problems are real, they had to be real to create this atmosphere, but the solutions are never violence. That's never the solution. You know, violence as or self-defense, you know, that's sort of the last resort that we have to take when we're being attacked. But this is to divide the people more and more and more, to make the fault lines even bigger. This has been going on now for a very long time, and we need to find a way to come closer together and bridge those gaps. The desired outcome is, like I said before, the world being divided into a few zones, not nations any longer, big blocks and unions. You remember we talked about, we already have the European Union, probably one of the most horrific and failed projects in history, but we have it. And then you have the great vision for the North American Union that came out of the Club of Rome. This, I would encourage you to look it up, the Club of Rome, if you haven't heard of it. A very powerful organization. And in the 60s, they came out with the vision for the North American Union, which would include, I kid you not, Canada, the United States, Mexico, and Greenland. Well, where have we heard that lately? A spontaneous outburst of ideas from this current administration? No, not so much. The North American Union, one block, the Asian Pacific Union, another block. And so the world is supposed to get divided up into these blocks with an eventually a centralized government system, a centralized financial system, completely digital, a digital currency, digital health, digital everything. And that is already unfolding and rolling out in many nations, by the way. It's to now it's the point to create the conditions so that the populations will actually call for this. So they want to inflict so much pain on the people from all areas so the people will call for it. And the best thing that people can do is make themselves as independent and sovereign and free enough so that they don't have to call for this, so that they don't get in a situation where they need all of this. You combine that, by the way, if you look at the typical arguments around immigration are soon going to completely disappear. Immigration has, for example, this kind of undocumented immigration in America has been largely accepted by all sections of the population because the economy needed it. Name the city in America where you see a construction site where mainly white folks are working or Americans are working. That construction site does not exist. It's the same for agriculture. It's the same for landscaping. It's the same for many sections of society where mostly South American immigrants have come into the nation and are providing all that labor, oftentimes, by the way, at a very high quality, I should say, but at a much lower cost. And that has created a subsection of the economy and the society that is a pillar. And it wasn't possible to remove that pillar until you had an alternative. Now with robotics and AI, we're moving into the age of an alternative. And so this system is being removed. But here's the other side. These are human stories. These are families, decades, cultures, integration in many ways. You have to lead with your heart when you look at all of this and what's being done. This is going to be one of the most challenging moments for European and American societies to stay centered and balanced through this, because the potential for incredible conflict is huge. The injustices that were created are big, and the solutions seem to be almost impossible to implement. But we need to lead with higher consciousness, with human creativity, and not get on these emotional bandwagons. And that's what politics, that's what these folks always want us to do. Get emotionally completely invested in these situations, lose our ability to think clearly, and jump on the bandwagon, feed them fear and anger and hatred and violence. And that's simply not something that we should give them. So with that being said, on this subject or any other subject, I want to open this second part of the show, or we want to open it to some Q&A. If you have any questions, can be anything related, please put them in all caps so Kristin can find them easier, and I'd be happy to answer.
Nolan is in the chat. I said that you guys have to get together again for another interview.
Yona Aniwodi, my friend, our dear friend, I see Kristin just tells me is in the chat today. Good to see you. And yeah, we should get together again. We should probably pick up where we left off, my friend, and talk more about the wisdom that you share. But yeah, this is open for questions. And so all caps, please. And then we're gonna see what comes out here. By the way, exciting news. If you don't have any questions, just let us know. That's fine too. Exciting news. After we log off here, I'm gonna do an interview with Dr. Ed Group. You might know him. He's been around for quite some time. Also been a victim to a certain degree of the censorship and the deplatforming wave of the 2020s. But a prominent truth doctor, truth seeker, truth speaker, helping many people and uncovering many things. So we're going to have a fantastic conversation. It's an open Q&A. We do this every now and then. And thank you so much, y'all, for your contributions. Really appreciate it. The Simply Spoiled. I just found a video on YouTube, and I want to know more about FLFE and what the free trial does. How does it work? Well, that is a brilliant question. One of my favorite subjects to talk about, actually. So let's talk about sacred sites or places in spaces and places in nature or buildings, monasteries or other sacred sites where people go to pray and to receive healing and to be in a field, because that's what it really is, in a high vibrating field that feels special and uplifting. Now, those fields exist all over the world, and people go there, pilgrimage sites and whatnot, and spend some time there and have special experiences there. And the question is now, why do such fields exist, and how come other places don't feel the same way? Sacred sites are usually where over centuries people have gathered and prayed and created healing and infused it with love, and geographic locations are capable of holding that energy and holding that high vibrating energy. So our friends over at FLFE, the founders, Jeff and Clayton, who've been students and consciousness researchers all their lives, have through a series of guided events, some people call them coincidences, but guided events, found a way to associate, let's say, your home with their service. And what their service does is, through a series of long testing and formulating positive programs, they're able to maintain such a high energy field, similar to the ones that are at a pilgrimage site, to maintain that in your home. Their service, their quantum technology, if you will, is associated, if you choose to use their service, with your specific geographic location, just like a pilgrimage site. And then that space is cleared from negative energies and goes up in consciousness. Now, that doesn't mean you automatically go up in consciousness. What happens is, the more time that we spend in high consciousness places, the more we usually rise too. So when people spend time in those monasteries and pilgrimage sites, usually their consciousness goes up too, which is the entire point of the services, to help create the optimal conditions for consciousness to rise. Some of the common effects are better sleep, more energy, greater conflict resolution, even more harmony and success around business endeavors. I mean, there are, and this is, they would never claim that, but anecdotal stories. Many people wrote us. Somebody wrote, there were the California fires in winter, and the fire was going for a house and stopped at the porch and basically took a turn. And that property was in an FLFE, or the path of a hurricane didn't affect it, or of a tornado. I mean, these are not things that they ever claim that the service can do. But I would encourage you to visit, to start the free trial, go to highconsciousnessfield.com, and you can start that free trial for 15 days. You will feel it, but also go to the website then and look at the research and the studies that have been done that prove the effects also on plant life. Plants grow better, faster, more nutrient dense. Animals in the field feel better, have more harmony. I mean, it's a wonderful service. So you can.
They're doing free webinars, I think, every month.
Yeah.
Everybody can join for free and ask all the questions they want.
And the founders are doing free webinars, I think once a month or even twice a month, not sure, where you can ask questions. And again, the trial is completely free. You don't need a credit card or anything like that. It's just a gift, 15 days, which I would encourage everyone to give it a try. In your personal opinion, do you believe the globals will succeed with their dream? No. I thought about this, by the way, yesterday in a different context. When we look at, when we look at the future, and we've recently done a show on this and how to predict the future. The future is not set in stone, but there are most definitely high potentials. And so my research and our research has shown us that high civilizations have existed many times before, but they've always, in some way, shape, or form, either destroyed themselves or gone through cataclysms where they were destroyed. And so either way, the worst case scenario is they push forward. The masses plus the critical mass, the small minority, don't offer enough different energy so that this vision comes to greater fruition. It will lead inevitably to another cataclysm. That vision will lead to a cataclysm. And that would be the end of their dream as well. So no, I don't think this will succeed. And above all, love and creation are the triumphant, omnipotent force in all of creation. So how much detour we have to take to get there, I don't know. That really depends on us. Do you find it amazing what you've learned from the animal nations? Okay. See, when I know who's asking the question, it's better to put it in context. I find it amazing how much I'm always learning. I think I'll tell you what. More a general answer. I have decided I had an experience probably around 20 years ago. I read a book, and that book talked about certain principles, and probably a lot of people have read it, but doesn't matter. Talked about certain principles. And I read that book, and when I closed that book, I remember the situation as if it was yesterday. I thought, oh my God, I know it all now. This is it. There's nothing more to learn. I got it. And boy, did life decided to show me a lesson. And it literally it put stuff in my way that led me to one clear conclusion. Every day is a joyous, adventurous learning excursion. And my answer to your question is, it is more than amazing, because every day I'm willing and open to learn and expand. And our conversations, for example, Yona, were very, very expanding and are still, I'm still walking with it. So thank you for that question. And I hope that was a satisfying answer. This doesn't relate to this episode. Doesn't matter. I'm curious if you guys have listened to any of Robert E. Grant's interviews. He has a recent on regarding a chat with GPT. I assume. No. Unfortunately, no. I can't say anything to that. Did John ever serve in the military? Not in this lifetime. No, I haven't. Thank you for that question. How am I feeling, and how is our family doing? Well, thank you. We're all feeling very good. Feeling wonderfully positive, and this is sort of the this is sort of the challenge of our work, is to see the things and see through the things, and at the same time realize we're incredible creators. So we're feeling very good. Thank you for asking. And so is our family. Thank you. What types of entities created this master plan? This is a big, big question. And we could talk about the origin, the origin of those entities. But let's go to the interesting level, which is the consciousness level. Everything is consciousness, everything. So if creation, the source of all that is the highest point of consciousness, or let's just say the completest point of consciousness, then the entities who have been manipulating all this here and who are concocting these master plans, they're extremely clever. They're smart, but they are very far away from that source creation consciousness. They're on the opposite spectrum, right? And what they were so good at is slowly but surely, because they don't experience and perceive time and centuries the way that we do. They have kept certain secrets to themselves. They were able over centuries and millennia to seduce and distract us from that creation power that we all have within us, and look at the purely intellectual, logical, or illogical, I should say, this smartness, cleverness side of things. And that's how they got us to detach from our divinity. That's how they got us to forget about it. And so to claim that I know exactly whether these are the Draco reptilians or a specific race, I'm more interested in the consciousness level. And theirs is extremely low, and our natural one is extremely high. So this is what's really important. That's a wonderful question. How much did the Ringing Cedars books change you and your family's lives? I would say that the essence of those books and the effect that it's having is immeasurable, because the only logical and heartfelt conclusion that you can receive from reading the books is to return to that creator space that I just talked about. And that is a lifelong journey. But what you see today, all the work that is out there, everything that we do is in honor of that essence. So I hope that answers it. Do the LA riots look like the color revolutions we have witnessed throughout the world? What are the similarities or differences? Well, generally speaking, let's take what was one of the bigger ones was probably the Ukraine in 2013, 2014 color revolution. So these are intelligence operations where a goal is being defined, for example, to change the government of a nation, right? And then you have to ask yourself, what do we have to do? If that nation, for example, has a beloved leader, but it's disadvantageous to our needs, then we have to first discredit the leader. Then we have to create enough division among the population. Then we have to install groups that start instigating on social media and other media and push for change. And so these are gradual things. And now I want you to replay whether we had such operations in place that led to where we are today in this nation. And the Smith-Mundt Act that was repealed by Obama under the Obama administration paved the way for this. So basically, there were some laws on the books before that. I believe it was repealed in 2013 or 14 or 12. I'm not quite sure, but around that time, that didn't allow for American institutions, government institutions, and whatnot to use propaganda on the American people directly. Because propaganda is always disseminated all over the world through various channels, but it wasn't allowed to be done in America. They did it, but not nearly as directly as now. And once that was repealed, it basically paved the way so that they could run all the psyops on the native population without any consequences. And so Operation Mockingbird, the complete takeover of the media, as if it wasn't already taken over, that happened. So the answer is, this has all the hallmarks of a color revolution. How important is it for us to create anything such as drawing, painting, a room, etc.? Does this lead to exercising our ability to be creative? It's a beautiful question, and I highly doubt that you didn't already know the answer, my dear friend. But thank you for asking it. We are creators, but creation takes on many forms. So the only question I would always ask is what we are creating, or what I am creating individually, is it going towards the source energy of creation? Is it helping? Is it supporting? Is it informing? Is it educating? Is it a force for anything good? Or is my creation something destructive? Those are the only two directions creations can take. But we are all, and this is such an important question, because many people think they're not creative, because they think, if I don't paint or draw, I'm not creative. Creativity isn't just arts. It's any and everything that you do with your mind, your heart, your words, your hands, anything. So it is natural for us to be creators. It is necessary as air and water. I watched a video that said they're starting to sign up musicians at some music companies. What do you think of that? I'm not sure what that means.
AI musician.
Oh, AI musician. Sorry, I didn't see that. Well, this is kind of a little bit of old news. I mean, being an artist and songwriter, I can tell you that the big platforms have such sophisticated AI music creators in order to not pay out royalties to real songwriters and creators. So this is, and and specifically with the younger generation of creators that doesn't give a shit whether it comes from within them, as long as it gets views and clicks and gets them ahead, they couldn't care less. Not all of them, but many of them. And so they use all these tools and all the AI to basically fake their creations. People are going to watch AI created movies and listen to AI created songs, and they're going to live an AI created life. Those are the bio robots. They already exist, they're already out there, and that's what they're going to do. Real, authentic, spirit-led people will not resonate with that, and they will always feel weird, strange, and a dissonance when looking at these things. So whichever way you slice it, real creativity will never disappear for as long as we remain human. What?
Somebody said, Stephen said, AI musicians won't drink all your beer and come on to your girlfriend.
Steven says, AI musicians won't drink all your beer and come on to your girlfriend. Wait, you don't know what the robots will do. John Galt, what an ominous name. Would you suggest don't engage, keep emotions in check? I'm hesitant to say do this. As a general theme, start your day with harmonizing and balancing through breath work or whatever any other thing you could do, and make this a common practice throughout the day. Have you ever been in a situation where you got caught up in an energy so much that it took you minutes or hours or even days to realize that you've been caught up in that energy and you haven't really directed your own life any longer? That energy did. And that is how psychological mass operations work. They create such an energetic momentum or help shape it that people get caught up in it. So the real trick is to stay sovereign in your feelings, in your emotions, and in your state of being. That is a practice. And if you practice it, no one can fuck with your state. And your state is what determines everything else. So that's why this is so important. Now, what you choose to do, you could choose to go into these zones. You could choose to go into LA or Atlanta or New York and be in that state, and you would be a force for good there. So the state that you're in, who you are while you're doing what you're doing, determines everything. That's the most important thing. Why do you think the powers that be want to control us? What do you believe is the reason? End goal. P.S. Much love. I mean, here we go into... There's only one logical explanation, really, if you study this long enough. Somebody has to, or some entities, or some form of disconnected consciousness is obviously feeding off of the negative energy, the suffering. This world is built on suffering. I mean, even in the rich nations, the level of suffering is huge, where maybe survival and poverty aren't at the top of everybody's list, but depression, anxiety, and all the others are. So suffering is the common thing that the world is constantly built on. So it isn't so much, about just power. It is about keeping that state alive, keeping human consciousness entrapped in that state of suffering. And liberation is really to transcend suffering and detachment, which, it's sort of a Buddhist tradition thing if you look at it in other traditions. But it really is that when we transcend the state of suffering and realize that we can rise above it, there's nothing to feed off of any longer. It is an inside job. Anything one tries to alter purely on the outside just gets them more tangled in the trap. Our true power is what we stop doing. What should we stop doing, in your opinion? Like I said, you have to be a self-directed being, right? And so if you wonder what you should stop doing, is ask yourself, who is pulling my strings? It could be past trauma. It could be an unspoken obligation to someone in your family It could be your association and affiliation with organizations that you used to believe in. It could be your religious association and you hear the voice of your pastor or whatever. It could be your alternative media channel, and you hear that person's voice in your mind. And your question is, what is my own true voice saying? My own true spirit voice? What is that part of me saying? And once you hear that, you will stop listening or obeying, I should say, obeying all these other voices that want to have a piece of your attention. You can still get information, but you will listen to that voice. And that is, to me, that's liberation. When you say yes when you mean yes, no when you mean no, and you don't worry about the consequences, now that's liberation. That's freedom. What do you feel ought to be the leading questions we might explore with people who appear to still be asleep? You know, I would jump a step ahead, and those who are still asleep and don't show any signs of interest, push the skip button, waste your time. And those who are in the state of awakening or beginning or asking questions, I would usually say that topics that are close to home for them, which is usually health, if you can help them ask the bigger questions as to why are they sick, why are their family members sick, why is there so much sickness in the population at large. You know, if you're living in a nation like America, you might ask, how come we're so developed and rich, but we have the highest cancer rates, highest obesity rates? And when that is usually, health is the greatest avenue usually for exploration because it hits so close to home. And then from there on, usually specifically with today's information field, you will already have sent them on the journey. But that is the least controversial thing. If you start with religion as a control system, politics and political parties, usually you don't get anywhere. But the health thing is usually universal. What is the best way to start eating for our best health? Is it better to buy meat and vegetables locally or even grow them yourself? I mean, I think you answered that yourself. And this sounds like a almost impossible thing to do for many people because all they ever knew was the grocery store, and also financially they feel like they can't do anything else. But I would start going to farmers markets. I would start talking to people. You know, sometimes, I'll give you an example. Sometimes it seems non-feasible to go to a farmer's market and if, like, for example, you eat meat or vegetables or whatever you eat, and you want to go there and you say, hey, like, this is high quality beef, but at the same time it's very expensive. But what if you and a couple neighbors got together and you decided to purchase half of a cow from that farmer? You know, then you get a different price. So start getting creative with that. But whatever you can do to get food from a natural, more sovereign food source and to start doing it yourself, every single step you take is better. The first step I would take with regards to food is eliminate processed foods. That's the first thing I would do. I wouldn't tell anyone what exactly, because some people feel really called to do only plants and others feel called to do carnivore, but stay away from processed foods and you'll feel much better either way.
Well, plus having connections to local farmers, local vegetable farmers and meat farmers is for the future a wonderful way to connect. Nobody
I mean,
knows.
What we can grow ourselves or when it's out of growing season, we have established those relationships, you know, with farmers. So if for whatever reason other places don't have food or are low on food, we have those relationships. We already have them, and we know that, you know, if and when we need food, it will be available to us. So those are all things it's part of the sovereignization chain of things to do. Sovereignize your food sources. Man, that's so much freedom right there. Katie, in respect of Robert Edward Grant, have you looked into the AI agent that birthed or breathed into existence called the Architect? No. I've heard of the Architect and all of that, but no, I no. I have no answer on that. What could happen if we placed a high consciousness field over Los Angeles? Would that be against the free will of those who live there? Is this technologically possible? Now, I will paraphrase the answers from the founders of FLFE. To a certain degree, and they are doing that kind of work. But as you rightfully put it, there has to be a voluntary relationship with anything. So you can't force things on people. Even good stuff you can't force on people. You're not allowed to do that on a spiritual level. And if you do, it has usually terrible consequences. But they do an incredible amount of service work, and they do it in a way that is in the highest and best interest of all. But that is a very responsible path that one must take here. So some of their work is exactly focused on the things that you mentioned here. And for various reasons, that is not being talked about. And this is as much as I'm going to say. A strange question, I know, but do you believe that energy actually exists in the void? And if so, is it different from the energy we produce here, especially as it is emotionally charged?
You mean positive or negative?
Yeah. I don't know that I've ever felt anything like the energy in the void. So that right away, but everything that we experience here is finite and limited. So as long as you're in the body, you experience the boundaries of the body, like 99% of the time, unless you're in meditation, but you experience the body, the limitations. You have this, this much energy throughout the day, then your energy goes down. And everything else around us has limitations. But when you're in the void, which is only a word that describes the space of all that is, it is infinite in energy. There's no limitation to anything. And that cannot be explained. It can only be experienced. So this realm here will never be that. Even if we somehow manage to turn it into something amazing, it will never be that. It's because its nature is different. But when you remain connected to that void or that creator energy, you are as positive an influence as you can be here. And that's the best you can do. And that's what I would recommend. Greetings, Jean and family. How close do you think we are to them rolling out robots for control of the people? Well, they are. In some places, they've already done dog robots. In some places, they're becoming more common. But here's how it usually plays out. The first mass adoption in robots won't come through law enforcement. It will come through Amazon. It will come through services that people voluntarily accept. Because once they get used to the images, once they get used to a robot delivery or a drone delivery, whatever, once that becomes more common, then it's much easier for them to accept, oh, now the police are using some of that too. And this is the smart way to do it. So I don't see that during these riots here, there will be much of robotic enforcement. There will be drones. There will be maybe some robot dogs in some places. But that technology will still be more in the background. It has to come through the private sector. It has to come through the economy. And then people accept it in other places.
Hold on. I'm answering on both sides.
Thank you, Just Pudding. Really appreciate it.
What happened? Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the contribution. People been hearing devilish laughter, cursing in GPT chats or Suno AI music. Do you think artificial intelligence is demonic in nature? Those are big questions, and it's a field of study. Let me put it this way. We are exploring the theory, and have been, whether the artificial neural networks that are created to make this kind of AI possible, these massive data centers and connections that are established, whether these connections can host consciousness from other realms. There's a theory, and people claim that that's actually the entire goal of AI, and so we're exploring it. It is a field of study, but I'm very hesitant to give a yes or no answer here. Do you think it's possible to hold a frequency within myself that will cover my family from the harmful events? So, if you have young children, then they are within your field of responsibility. So we always imagined a protective blue bubble around them whenever they left the house or went someplace, wherever they went. And it was within our right and responsibility to do so. When it comes to adult family members, it's kind of like, a good Christian, and I don't mean this in any derogatory way, but a good Christian will ask you, may I pray for you? So they're asking permission to do that. And you can think as positively as you want about anyone else, but when you seek to influence their experiences without their knowledge or permission, you're on very thin ice. It's just, we have to respect the sovereignty of others. But if you ask them and they agree to it, you can most definitely do your thing. And this is just my take on it. We have to respect each other's sovereignty and dignity, even if the other person chooses to do something that's harming them. We don't really, except for some very special circumstances, have the right to interfere with that. What are your thoughts on the epidemic of trauma people experience by not escaping complicity with the current genocide? Well, you just hit the nail on the head, boy. The entire state of the world and state of the population that we're observing is only possible because of unresolved trauma. Not people that are either haven't been traumatized, which I haven't met that person, but people who haven't been traumatized or who have really worked on healing, they are not participating in any madness in this world. They are neither violent, nor are they aggressive, nor are they manipulative, nor do they lie, cheat, steal. Only traumatized people do this. Unfortunately, 99% of the population, probably more, has been systemically traumatized over many generations. So we carry it now as a genetic imprint. That doesn't mean it can be healed. It can, but we have to do the work. So all of the madness stops when people heal on a large scale. I can safely predict that. Hurt people. That's truly how it is. And if you hear some weird chewing, that's our. I
just wanted to apologize.
That's our German Shepherd, Montana, chewing on a bone here. So, yeah, this is probably the most important question anyone could ask. Thank you. Also wondering if you have gotten an answer from Sabrina Wallace. Will she come on and have a conversation with you guys? No, we have not. We keep tagging her on X and no hard feelings whatsoever. She does her thing and she does her work. And if that's how it is, that's wonderful. We appreciate that somebody's doing it the way that she does. We would love to have her on, but absolutely no hard feelings if that's not in the cards right now. Do you have any thoughts on the actual collapse of our society besides 2030 date? Well, a collapse is not the ideal way that I would envision it, but the end of this cycle, this system, this society as we have known it is definitely very welcome in my view. It's actually something we've been actively working on, but not the collapse, but the transition into a self-directed sovereign way of living. And that's what we continually work on. But this old paradigm system, either way, whichever way you slice it, is coming to an end. And the question now is, we're not quite in the in-between, but we're entering this in-between phase where people will either look or already see the next savior, the AI systems, or they will ask a bigger question and go another way. But the world as we have known it is over. It has already collapsed. It's on artificial life support. It's in a weird state. So how much pain people need to experience through this is really more or less an individual choice. And that's why all the stuff that we talk about are to empower yourself to make a better choice. How does an empath keep from losing themselves in this world? Should we hide our emotions or allow them out? Or I don't know, what do you and Kristin think? So there is a common misconception that an empath automatically feels everything another feels. Well, that's a shitty way to live. Because if you have turned on your sensory capabilities to an open setting where you basically just feel and experience everything that anyone around you experiences, and you feel their pain, you feel their suffering, that's not an empath. That is slow emotional suicide. So to be empathetic is to have the capability to put yourself in the situation of another long enough to be able to sense their experience so you can, if asked, be of assistance to them. That's the only reason why we would be empathetic. Otherwise, it's just it's also sometimes false virtue signaling. I feel you. I feel it. I feel it so strongly. So who's helped by that? No one. It's the old example, and I've shared this often. Somebody is laying on the ground, they fell, they have a problem, and you walk by and they say, help me. What do? You reach out your hand, you say, come on, grab my hand, I'll pull you up, and you pull yourself up too, right? When that happens, in a few seconds, that has happened, everybody was helped, everybody's on their way, it's all good. Same situation, you go there, somebody says, oh, help me, you stretch out your hand, and the second that they see your hand, they start grabbing it and they start pulling you down, and you say, what are you doing? I'm trying to help you up. Oh no, you don't understand, this is so bad, blah 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 blah. And they start pulling you down. They don't want to get up, they just want someone else to be down there with them. And empaths think that's what they need to do. They need to feel all of that pain and they need to be a part of that pain. Bullshit. That's not empathy. That's emotional suicide. So yes, and that's what I was going to say. And a sign of your own unhealed pain that is looking for resonance. So this is not what empathy is. It's not healthy. It's not good. It doesn't help anyone. So in other words, if you find yourself with this open valve, constantly experience things, it's a surefire sign to go into healing mode and find someone who can guide you through a healing process, and you will be able to regulate that valve properly. Just Pudding. Thank you again. Love the name, by the way. Makes me hungry. I had a semi-lucid dream a couple of days ago, and I went to what felt like a real place somewhere where very impoverished, and I was like a ghost talking to the people there. Is this a thing or just a dream? I don't know, but if it felt very real, you know how we travel in the dream time and how this is interpreted by our society as just subconscious stuff getting resolved, and some of it is, but others is where your soul literally leaves the body to travel through dimensions and spaces and returns, and I think we know the difference. We always know the difference. So I think you can probably answer that for yourself. Maybe a couple more.
Yeah, I have one more after that.
Charlotte Grierson, can we look forward to a new song? I've been writing a lot lately. Enjoying the process more than ever, probably. So yes, but geez, I don't know when. I don't even know what song yet. There's a few candidates, And but yeah.
Well, you could play some of them on local.
Yeah, I could probably, what we can do is somewhere in the near future, I could do a little local show for our wonderful supporters on locals as a preview of things to come. But yes, I'm writing, I'm creating, I'm enjoying it a lot. Why are the awake scared of my truth? That's big gas chaos. Well, spill it, man. You know, you've been beating around the bush for so long now. Just spill it out. Whatever you need to create, it's all out there. You need a blog, you need a book, you need a video. Do it, man. Share your truth. I don't know that anyone's afraid of it. I just think you're afraid of sharing it, or otherwise you would have. All right, friends, wonderful folks, beautiful people. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here with us. Wherever this thing is unfolding, to come back to the premise of the show, when conscious creators are present, we can become, and I mean this, we can become the steering committee. We could possibly do that. Or we can get caught up in the emotion of the moment, and then we feed the machine. And those are the only two valid choices. Much love to you. Many blessings. We'll be back with you again very, very soon. Your environment shapes everything, your thoughts, your health, your energy. But most people never question the invisible field they live in. We did, and that's when FLFE found us. It's not a product, it's a field of pure life force energy that lifts everything it touches. We now live in it 24/7, and we would love to invite you to experience it too. Start your free 15-day trial now. No pressure, no strings attached. Just the truth, resonance, and peace.